Hello there, late night Lombardi. We're going to have a more casual discussion this time. 49ers Lions in the NFC Championship game. Detroit's biggest weakness, and I'm going to get into this over the course of this week. We're going to go heavy into preview mode because it's the NFC title. So go ahead and subscribe right now if you want your Brock Purdy talk. If you want to talk about every corner of the 49ers roster, I think I track this more obsessively than anyone. That's your 49ers depth chart. We may have a few things to fix and update on the depth chart right now, but I'll get back into it. Anyway, my thing here is the Detroit Lions' biggest weakness on paper is their pass defense. Is Brock Purdy going to light up the Detroit Lions? Because think of this, we always start big picture, then we zoom in. The Lions are going to be playing without the benefit of rain, defensively at least. Obviously, rain helped the Green Bay Packers defense on Saturday night, but it's going to be 70 degrees. It should be dry. Detroit's biggest weakness, cornerback position, not good for Detroit. Cam Sutton, the veteran, one of their corners, not having a good year at all. Pass rush, they got a little bit of that. Aiden Hutchinson coming off the edge. He's been working against the left and the right side, and I'm sure they're going to line him up on Colton McKivitz, see if they can get after Brock Purdy a little bit. But one pass rusher hasn't stymied Brock Purdy this season. The linebackers, Anzalone is one of Alex Anzalone's one of the linebackers. He's been okay in coverage, hasn't been great though, and I don't think anybody has an advantage over Christian McCaffrey and George Kittle. So dry track team that definitely not going to be rusty anymore. If they were rusty last week, I think it was the wet weather that was the biggest issue, and a suspect pass defense, mediocre at best for the Detroit Lions. I think things set up in this game for the San Francisco 49ers to score a lot of points, especially against the Lions who play a lot of zone defense. Kyle Shanahan is going to have his pick of mismatches on the field. I think this sets up really, really well for the 49ers. Remember, it was just last year that Detroit didn't make the playoffs because their defense was ranked number 27 in the league. And they got better. C.J. Gardner-Johnson was one of the players they picked up, and he was talking trash to Deebo Samuel back in October. We'll see if Deebo plays. We got the update there today. So that's made, that move, the maturation of this defense, the next step in the program for Detroit has made them better. They might be slightly above average this year. They'll blitz. They'll play their zone defense, but Brock Purdy's been good against the zone. He's been good against the blitz. He's been good against everything, really. It could be a game, and it probably is lining up to be a game where the 49ers offense can really take off. That's going to be my early week prediction, I think. And, there's obviously motivation for the 49ers offense. I just did a show a few minutes ago, but I talked about the Brock Purdy discourse going out of control. Well, Deebo Samuel had something to say about that. Never seen so much hate for a QB that leads the league in almost every category. So the 49ers are in a spot right now where they're motivated because they can make it back to the Super Bowl. That's motivation number one. But all the chatter ahead of this game, the very poor nature of the discourse, I think, seems to line up really well with the fact that the 49ers have a massive statistical advantage in the pass game over the Detroit Lions. All right, let's take a look at the 49ers depth chart. Let's check in here on Late Night Lombardi. Cleveland Farrell is now on injured reserve for the 49ers. How about that? So we'll add him to the IR list. The 49ers did activate George Odom to take Farrell's spot, but we'll put Farrell over here on the very right, shade him in the correct color. It's always fun to update the roster in real time for you. And that means that Robert Beal Jr. moves up a spot in the pecking order. The rookie got 5 snaps for the 49ers on Saturday. So Beal active in the postseason. It's been a nice progression for the 5th round pick out of Georgia. George Odom off of injured reserve. So we can take his name off of this column and move him back into a backup position over on this side. The 49ers started Logan Ryan, the veteran, instead of Jair Brown. So we'll make a depth chart amendment there. And guess who else they started? They started John Feliciano instead of Spencer Burford. So we can make a lineup adjustment up here. John Feliciano, right guard. Spencer Burford now second string. Burford got, I believe, one drive. He got 7 snaps in this game. But Feliciano's been one of the better run blocking guards in football. So we have him now in the first string. And Feliciano had a nice block on the game-winning touchdown for Christian McCaffrey. I don't know what way they're going to go with Logan Ryan. They said that Jair Brown, because he had been hurt for a couple of weeks, he missed some time before the end of the regular season. They didn't want to throw him right into the Wolves in the postseason. So obviously they went with veterans in Feliciano and Logan Ryan for the postseason over youngsters like the rookie Jair Brown and the second-year guard Spencer Burford. I don't know what the thinking, especially with Logan Ryan and Jair Brown, will be moving forward, but that's going to be something to watch this week. As far as injuries go, Deebo Samuel, we could shade him in pink right now, and we'll see what his status is come Wednesday. So there you have it, 53-man roster. We need, I think we added 2 spots to the injured reserve list. How many players do we have on there? Yep, 70-man roster for the 49ers. All right, spreadsheet is all updated. This is your 49ers depth chart. I'm going to open it up to Q&A early today. This is the nighttime, late night Lombardi. This is more of a Q&A show. Maybe show you some of the lunch. Went to Rhea's Sandwiches in the Mission. That was good. I got to pull up the video. Had a sandwich with chicken on it. Chicken. Really, really good. I didn't see Logan Ryan give up anything huge in coverage, no, to answer your question here. Ambry Thomas was giving up the pass interference penalties, had 2 big ones downfield. So Ambry Thomas is who the Lions, I think, will try to pick on. I have a preview of the game coming out tomorrow morning on The Athletic. Here's one thing that you need to know. Jared Goff has been a lot better at home on turf in the dome than he has been on the road. Everything goes down efficiency-wise for him on the road. Also, his splits versus pressure, everybody's splits versus pressure are going to be worse, right? You expect the quarterback to be better in a clean pocket. But his ranks in efficiency when pressured versus when the pocket around him is kept clean are significantly lower when pressured. Clean pocket, Jared Goff has been top 5 efficiency across the board. He goes down to about number 15 across the efficiency metrics when he's been pressured. So pressure him, get him on the road. The 49ers already did that by getting the number 1 seed. All that makes Jared Goff a worse quarterback. And I think that the 49ers are in position defensively to take on this Lions team. Now, Ambry Thomas is still a weakness for the 49ers in the back end until proven otherwise. That's who the Packers picked on. We'll see how Detroit tries to pick on him. Obviously, they have Amon-Ra St. Brown. I think you'll probably see Charvarius Ward on Amon-Ra St. Brown more often than not if the 49ers can help it. Also have Josh Reynolds, big 6'3" target. We'll see how they mix and match. Reynolds, who plays in the slot, will play outside. Sam Laporta, nice tight end for Detroit. Well, they're a 2-back team as well, right? With David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs. Big back, smaller back, ability to run out of play action. We'll see how often the 49ers are in nickel against a smash mouth Detroit team because they have to be a nickel to bring Ambry Thomas into the game. It's going to be a lot of fun matchups in this one on Sunday for the NFC Championship. People are turning on Deebo Samuel. Why are people turning on Deebo Samuel? Because he got hurt? I mean, the guy's a total bulldog. I don't know how, as a football fan, you could fault him for getting bruised up when he plays the way that he does. Tina, I think the reason people don't care about Purdy's efficiency is because Jimmy had great efficiency with the Niners, and now look at him with the Raiders. Jimmy Garoppolo's in a completely different situation after he left the 49ers. It's a team sport. Every single quarterback is reliant on his teammates and his coaches and the system to deliver. Patrick Mahomes in a different situation wouldn't be Patrick Mahomes. Joe Montana in a different situation wouldn't have been Joe Montana. I don't know how hard this is to grasp. Steve Young was in Tampa Bay, and he was one of the least worst efficient quarterbacks in the league. Shows up and develops with the 49ers and turns into a Hall of Famer. It's a team sport. Jimmy Garoppolo obviously was a good quarterback when he was with the 49ers. A lot of stuff happened with the Raiders this year. I didn't follow it too closely because I cover the 49ers, so I'm not going to speak on it as if I'm an expert. But what I can do is evaluate what Jimmy Garoppolo did with the 49ers in the context of what Kyle Shanahan was running with that scheme against the 49ers opponents. And I could say he wasn't perfect, but he did a good job, especially when he was healthy for the 49ers. So he was good, right? Good efficiency. It's reflected in the numbers. It was reflected in the tape. It wasn't perfect. I think he threw a few too many picks at some big moments for the 49ers. That frustrated Kyle Shanahan, but the availability really frustrated Kyle Shanahan as well. Now you have Brock Purdy, and if you want to compare Purdy to Garoppolo, Purdy's taken the efficiency that Garoppolo's delivered, which was top 7, I'd say top 5 to top 7, depending on the stretch, right? But top 5 to top 7. Purdy has vaulted from there to number 1 by a lot. And in some ways, the 49ers supporting cast has improved. And in other ways, I'm sure that they've developed more cohesion offensively among some of the pieces. But in an overarching way, this has happened every year. Their offensive line is ranked, except for 2021, but their offensive line is consistently ranked below average in pass protection. So it's not easy to play quarterback anywhere in the National Football League. And nobody's sitting there discrediting Joe Montana for playing with the greatest football player of all time in Jerry Rice. Maybe at the time they were, but they didn't have Twitter. But it's patently ridiculous to assume that supporting cast and the ultimate team sport, the reason that we love football is because it's the ultimate team sport. It's patently ridiculous to pretend that supporting cast shouldn't matter. It does matter. It matters for every single quarterback who has ever played the game, period. And obviously playing for the Raiders is not the same as playing for the 49ers. It's not an indictment on Jimmy Garoppolo. It's not an indictment on Brock Purdy. But we're talking about how players perform within the context of their current situation. And you need to understand 49ers history to understand the 49ers present. Joe Montana wouldn't have been Joe Montana without Bill Walsh, without Jerry Rice. Brock Purdy wouldn't have been Brock Purdy without Kyle Shanahan, Christian McCaffrey, the guys around him. You could say that every single successful quarterback in the league has had his play caller, has had his supporting cast, has meshed with who he's needed to mesh with, has not meshed with some aspects of the game operation as well. That's why every single quarterback has had his struggles. But what we do is we look at that gray area and we can appreciate it for what it's worth. We don't just say, oh, Jimmy Garoppolo went to Vegas, not doing as well. Brock Purdy must be bad. Doesn't make any sense. It's not smart analysis. Smarter analysis, I think, is needed in the game of football. You want me and Mike on a live? You want Mike to come on live too? Maybe Mike will get on camera one of these days. That'd be kind of cool. Or do you want Mike Shanahan to come on the live? Is Farrell a bigger loss than we expected? I think that anytime you lose a valued part of your defensive line rotation this late in the game, it's going to hurt because there's cohesion that's already built up front. So Farrell was, I think, delivering a little bit from the pass rushing standpoint too. I think they got a little bit of juice out of him in that way. Chris Kasarik coaches them up with the best of them. But Farrell was, I think, setting some nice edges. We'll see what Chase Young does here moving forward. I know he had a few underwhelming snaps, but he didn't grade out poorly on the aggregate against Green Bay. The 49er defense is getting some heat after this game. At the end of the day, they only gave up those, 20 points against Green Bay? 21. Yeah, it was 24-21. And Farrell Farrell didn't play. Chase Young did have some pressures and he didn't make some stops in that football game. It wasn't like this atrocious game on the other edge from Nick Bosa. So let's let this play out. Losing Cleveland Farrell is obviously something that we mention, but I wouldn't go out and say it's some kind of devastating blow that it's bigger than we thought it was to the 49ers. I think that you lose a little bit of rhythm right after you lose a lineman who you've grown accustomed to having in that rotation because the 49ers like working them through and keeping them fresh. But it's not something that has to derail you for more than a week or two. And I think that the 49ers should be fully ready with their post-Cleveland Farrell rotation in this NFC Championship game after logging a game without him. I am waiting for some more questions. Whose call is it for Debo to play? That's going to be a medical decision. The doctors will either clear him or not, because I'm sure Debo wants to play. Here's a thought. Someone believes that Brock Purdy and the 49ers checked the last box needed in order to prove themselves last game, winning from behind. They have proven that they are top dogs, and that scares everyone. I'm sure that's part of it. I think that if we were to delve into the psyche of the insanity that is this argument, I just sit back and laugh at it because it just gets so ridiculous. And I talked about it in a different video, but Brock Purdy can literally lead the league in air yards per attempt, and he's close to leading it, especially in some singular games. He's been close to leading it. He can throw 5 times as many passes downfield as Josh Allen, and people will still call him a check down merchant. It is like a complete disassociation from reality. People just don't care about the truth anymore if they're on a certain side of this really manufactured debate. There really is no debate that Brock Purdy is really good. I mean, it's amongst legitimate people, right? It's just something that's been contrived and created, and it's turned into this passionate yet fake conversation because it's not tethered in any sort of reality. So whenever you got that kind of monster that's built up, yeah, some of it might be fueled by the fact that people are scared of the 49ers, but not all of it. I think it's more complicated on several levels, and we can psychoanalyze it all we want, but we probably won't ever fully get to the bottom of it. Notice the Packers covering the field on almost every passing play, the middle of the field. I mean, it's smart to cover the middle of the field. Most NFL teams, especially the teams in the Shanahan tree of offense, have emphasized the middle of the field because you remove a potential tackler, the sideline, both sidelines. So 2 potential tacklers. If you step out of bounds, the play is over. So the sideline is the defense's friend. It's similar reason and similar reasoning as to why the red zone is the defense's friend, because the back line is there, and that also condenses the field, so you have less to cover. So if you attack the middle of the field, you are as far away as possible from the sidelines, so you remove 2 potential tacklers as an offense. And that allows you to set the table for more yards after the catch if the quarterback delivers the ball accurately and on time. So defenses have responded by trying to take away the middle of the field. Brock Purdy's throw that should have been intercepted by Darnell Savage is going to the middle of the field. It was a bad throw, bad decision. He had to bounce back from that. When teams are gambling too much on the middle, it is important to hit the perimeter. Those throws require timing and arm talent. The timing is required anywhere, but real arm talent you need to have on the deep out throws, which Brock Purdy has. The Chris Conley 17-yarders are a great example. You know, another great example of beating a defense camped in the middle is Brock Purdy to George Kittle. On the run, rolling out, elite throw, downfield touchdown. So the reason that Purdy's been able to deliver league best efficiency like this is because he can make all the throws and is making all the throws and is counter adjusting to defenses that are trying to adjust to him. So if they're trying to guard the middle, Purdy has been stretching the field out and throwing to the boundaries, throwing deep. If they spread out a little too far, the 49ers can either run it or Brock Purdy can throw over the middle, underneath, whatever's open. I'm not going to get into complicated defensive schematics without having any tape in front of me right now. Also, if everyone's occupied downfield, Brock Purdy is athletic enough to run. He's got elite quickness. We know the 10-yard burst. We know the quickness that he has from the pocket. He's got elite quickness. He's not necessarily the fastest guy when it comes to running 10-plus yards. But boy, was he quick and fast enough to put the 49ers in position to score the winning touchdown on that scramble on the roll to the left. I think the quickness and the feel in the pocket, his ability to, it's a level of elusiveness, right? But it's less like slippery, I would say, than somebody like Russell Wilson, who was truly elusive. It's just Purdy is quick and he's smart. Quick and smart. It's a good combination at the quarterback position. And it's probably a necessary one for Brock Purdy because it's a little bit shorter than your average quarterback. And because of that, you've got to be able to maneuver your way in really efficient ways in the pocket so you can see all the throwing lanes. This is really interesting. The Lions remind Paul of the upstart 81 49ers, while this 49ers team reminds him of the established 81 Cowboys with a newbie QB, Danny White. It's funny because we compared Brock Purdy's performance to the 81 49ers to beat those Cowboys because Purdy started off the game relatively poorly against the Packers and then delivered the winning drive, right? But this is the first I heard of that, and it's really interesting because the Lions have a tortured franchise history. The Lions have not won a road playoff game since 1957 at Kezar Stadium. The Lions won a road playoff game in 1957 in San Francisco at Kezar Stadium, which is in the corner of Golden Gate Park, against the 49ers. I'll have more on that tomorrow. I have a cool story of the history. So the Lions are this franchise that has been through it. The fans have been through it. Dan Campbell said that he wanted to embody the fighting spirit of the city of Detroit. The city's been through it. When he took that job, Campbell wanted to resurrect this franchise and bring some joy to the area. The 81 49ers, the 70s were a dark period in the city of San Francisco's history, and the 81 49ers pumped some life with the catch, and then with the subsequent Super Bowl victory over the Bengals, they pumped some real life into this Bay Area. So when you look at this comparison that Paul has made down here, you see some of the parallels, right? You see the Detroit Lions, an upstart team. Their quarterback is wearing number 16. Their quarterback's from the Bay Area, Jared Goff, funny enough, although Montana wasn't actually from the Bay Area, Montana, Pennsylvania. But you see the Lions scratching and clawing in their third year under their head coach, Dan Campbell, who's changed some things. Bill Walsh was in his third year. You could see some of those parallels. And the 49ers, yeah, they're the big, bad 49ers for the last 5 NFC Championship games. I guess in this parallel, you have to accept that Kyle Shanahan is Tom Landry, who was the coach of the Cowboys then in 81. And then obviously it was Danny White. That was, for the Cowboys, that was past the Roger Staubach years. And before the Troy Aikman years, it was that intermediary period in the 80s. 49ers obviously hope that this parallel of yours, Paul, doesn't stretch out to Sunday. One difference is that the 49ers and the Cowboys played in the 1981 regular season, and the 49ers blew out the Cowboys. That'd be like the Lions blowing out the 49ers during this regular season. That didn't happen. But then all the turnovers happened, and the 49ers only beat Dallas by 1 point in the NFC Championship game. Sometimes our friend here wonders what the media would say if Joe Montana played the catch game today, especially since Montana wasn't Montana yet, and he hadn't won a Super Bowl at that point in time. I mean, that's exactly the point I made the other day. It's not really, it shouldn't be controversial. 25-year-old Joe Montana throwing interceptions in the catch game, then throwing the catch, but they call it the catch. They don't call it the throw. That was what Dwight Clark used to tell Joe Montana. Then they won the Super Bowl in rather ugly fashion too. 26-21. They had the goal line stand. Dan Buns, the linebacker, made that stop. Montana wasn't a world beater and wasn't really considered one until after his second Super Bowl. He beat Marino in the Super Bowl at Stanford Stadium in January of 1985. And then he won his third Super Bowl in the 1988 season. That was at Joe Robbie Stadium in Miami. That was today. That was, what, 36 years ago today? Yeah, that was 36 years ago today. 49ers won at Joe Robbie Stadium. That was right before I was born. I was born in May. That happened on January 22nd, 19, or maybe 1989. Maybe it was 36 years ago today. Unless my math is wrong. Don't make me do math live right now without a calculator. It was either 35 or 36 years ago. Anyway, that was the third Super Bowl. Then the fourth Super Bowl was 55-10 over the Broncos. But people would have been saying different stuff in the age of social media about the first Super Bowl. Talking more about this game coming up. Jared Goff is big and clumsy. He can't get out of his own way when he is pressured. Yeah, he's not good when he's pressured. That's a big key. But to get there, you got to stop the run, and the Lions are a very good team in the run game. Montana did lead a comeback in 1980 against the Saints, but to say that he was a football legend is a little much. I don't think that he was a football legend. The 49ers didn't even have a winning team in 1980 against the Saints. I think you have to QB a winning team before you can even be considered anything close to a legend. You probably have to win a Super Bowl. So you didn't win the Super Bowl until after the catch against the Cowboys. There were a lot of ugly plays throughout those 80s 49ers golden years. It was the grittiness and come from behind victories and the 2-minute drills that everybody remembers. Montana won the 1979 Cotton Bowl. That's good knowledge. Detroit's DVOA on offense is about number 5 or number 6, and on defense, number 13 or number 14. Good offense, rather mediocre defense. We won't know about Deebo Samuel for sure, and we might not. It might be a game time decision, to be honest, but we'll know more on Wednesday. And yes, the 49ers should worry about their run defense. It's the weakest component of that unit, and the Lions can run the football. Is the NFC Championship when that bye week pays off in big ways? Maybe the bye week already paid off last week. Maybe that's why the 49ers were able to withstand the Packers and finish that game so strong. I think obviously the weather played a role in that for both quarterbacks. You know, leading up to the game, I was like, you can't obsess about the weather because the weather is what's going to be. Both quarterbacks are going to have to deal with it. The truth is that weather does generally play an equalizing role if there's a big favorite, right? Because it creates a few more mistakes. And when there are a few more mistakes and inaccuracies, that tends to neutralize a favorite's advantage. But anyway, as I was saying, it affected both QBs. There was inaccuracies on both sides, and it's hard to tell, but it's quite possible that the 49ers' extra rest allowed them to have that necessary juice to bring things across the finish line at the end. Do I think that Brandon Ayuk will have a more productive game this week? Yes, absolutely. I don't like Detroit's cornerbacks. They have given up a lot this season. The Lions when you look at this pass defense, that is the weakness of this team. They have a good situation at nickelback, but I don't think that their outside cornerbacks have been good at all. Cam Sutton is one of the outside cornerbacks for Detroit, and then Kindle Vilder is the other one. The nickelback situation with Brian Branch, a rookie, is interesting. He's the leading tackler. He's been a missile. He's been solid in coverage. So Ayuk is not going to do a whole lot of work against the nickel, though. He's probably going to work against Cam Sutton. And if that happens, I give Brandon Ayuk, who's an all-pro, the advantage for the 49ers. Mike Evans did go off against the Lions. You saw it last week, and that's because the outside corners aren't very good for Detroit. I don't know who I'm picking between Kansas City and the Ravens. That's a tricky one. What's the point spread for Kansas City Ravens? Let's see. Ravens -3. That seems about right. That essentially means that Vegas has no idea what's going to happen, because that means, home field advantage is typically worth about that much. The Ravens have been the best team in football efficiency-wise over the stretch run of the season. It's been the Ravens number 1, the 49ers number 2. But when Patrick Mahomes gets things going, he is absolutely special. And we saw him dominate Buffalo. There's a chance he takes over the game in Baltimore. So the Ravens are only 3-point favorites. Could be a rematch of the 49ers and the Chiefs in the Super Bowl. John thinks that Purdy's going to dice up the Lions secondary. Very possible. Detroit runs a lot of zone. Detroit's not a great defense. The cornerbacks are sketchy. If Deebo Samuel plays, he has motivation to run over and truck CJ Gardner-Johnson after all that trash talk. I think that if they neutralize the front, and mainly Aiden Hutchinson, and when Detroit's defensive line, pass rushing wise, I don't think is so good that you have to worry about all these guys and Aiden Hutchinson sneaks by you. I think the 49ers can add some help to the Aiden Hutchinson side and continue operating efficiently downfield. If you can neutralize him, it's just about Brock Purdy capitalizing on the mismatches and making good decisions. And Brock Purdy has been an elite decision maker. So that's the key in this football game. Aiden Hutchinson lines up over both sides, but I would say slightly more over right tackle. So left side for him, right side Colton McKivitz against the 49ers. What's the 49ers pass block win rate? Number 20, I believe. They've been between number 20 and 23 in pass block win rate this year. So Purdy's been doing good work behind an offensive line that hasn't been great in pass protection. I don't think Aiden Hutchinson is as good as TJ Watt, but he's going to be an issue. And they'll have to help out Colton McKivitz. They'll have to scheme to make sure that Brock Purdy's getting rid of the ball quickly with pressure coming from whatever side Hutchinson's coming from. But standard football stuff, and Purdy's pocket presence, Purdy's release, Purdy's intelligence, his arm strength, everything, his moxie, it's made it possible for the 49ers to overcome an offensive line that just hasn't been great this year. Well, speaking of injuries on the Lions offensive line, I know Frank Ragnow has the ankle and the knee injury, right? The interior lineman for the Lions, but I think he's going to play, and he continued playing on Sunday. So I don't know anything more about that. Good offensive line for Detroit, but there are some injuries. So we've got to be very, very alert to what might happen to Detroit in that regard on Sunday. How do I feel about incorporating more of a blitz scheme against Jared Goff? Under pressure, he fails. Yeah, but he doesn't fail against just any pressure. It's got to be effective pressure. So you got to bring pressure and generate pressure that doesn't have easy answers on the back end. If you bring a blitz, you're inherently losing a cover guy. And if there's an easy answer, it doesn't matter if that pressure is coming. Jared Goff will be able to throw to the easy answer. The key is bringing the type of pressure with the type of pass coverage that makes Jared Goff take an extra hitch and hitch himself right into a sack. So blitzes can sometimes be very counterproductive. Brock Purdy's been the best quarterback in the league against the blitz this year. Teams tried that. The New York Giants in week 3 tried a lot of that. They didn't end up working. So, I tend to look at it from a perspective of blitz when you feel that blitz is well-timed, but don't bring more blitzes just to get more pressure. The most effective defenses are the ones that deliver quarterback harassment with only 4 up front, because then you've got 7 on the back end. And those 7 on the back end can choke away any throwing lanes and cause the quarterback to take those extra hitches. Think that Purdy's going to bounce back as far as his accuracy and rhythm goes. I think the 49ers offense is probably going to have a big day. I think it's lining up for that against Detroit. This is the first thing I said about the game, though. The most important threat is Detroit's run. Take that away, and it will be a long day for the Lions. Not going to give an early prediction yet. You could probably sense which way I'm leaning, but we can't break tradition. Prediction doesn't come until later in the week. The Lions' run game is nasty. They got 2 guys. They got David Montgomery, 224 pounds, and Jahmyr Gibbs, 200 pounds. It's got more of the slash quickness. That's a thunder and lightning combination for the Detroit Lions. A lot of checkdowns for Goff against the Bucs. Hey, I'm not sure blitzing is going to be the answer. I'll look up the numbers later, but I think that the answer against any veteran quarterback is the front 4 getting pressure on their own, which starts with stopping the run. Stop the run so you can have some fun. Can I see Ward following St. Brown? I think, this is one of those games where it might work, because I think that Amon-Ra St. Brown is a lot more productive than any other Detroit receiver. He's got 1,500 yards. Next highest is probably 600 or so. So it's most of the offense goes through either Amon-Ra St. Brown or Sam Laporta, who's been targeted 120 times this year. That's a tight end. Obviously, you're not going to have a corner following a tight end. So if there's a game where you could do some following, and I know the 49ers have done it before with DK Metcalf, I think this is a game where some following can happen. The Lions did sign Ertz. You are correct. But you spelled Ertz wrong. It's not U-R-T-Z. It's E-R-T-Z. So I'm not going to put your comment up. But thank you. How big of a game do you think McCaffrey might have? I would always brace myself for McCaffrey to have a huge game. He can go off against any defense because he's so damn versatile and so talented. Ertz is older. I get it. He hasn't done anything for most of the season. He's been out for a while. But maybe he feels he needed to rest his body, get some good workouts in, and he's got another game in him. We'll see what happens. It is a story. It is an interesting story that he's coming back to the Bay Area. Played at Stanford, is from the East Bay, Monta Vista High School in Danville. Coming back to the Bay Area to probably finish his career. Did the 49ers blitz at all last game? They did. There was a massive play. I think it was before the missed field goal from Anders Carlson at the end, but it was the 3rd down, and they brought what looked like it was a disguised blitz, It wasn't quite a zero blitz. One of the 49er, it might have been Warner, bluffed the blitz, stepped back. So it wasn't a straight zero blitz, but they got Jordan Love to believe that it was a zero blitz, and it came at just the right time. It was one of the many calls that Steve Wilks got right in that game. All right, 40 minutes in, 1,000 viewers at 10:23. I think that's the record for this late at night. Maybe on nights when the 49ers don't trade for Christian McCaffrey, we had a big, big audience then. I think it's my turn to go rest. I've been working hard. Tomorrow's a big day. We'll talk to everybody soon.